It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Crisis Talk Center. It is time to do some work today. The word of the day is analysis, and it's going to be part one of a three-part segment as we go through the three segments of the show. We are going to cover a massive, major case study. I'll tell you about it in a second after I say, good morning, David Einstandig.
Good morning, Ken. It's always a pleasure to see you. Always.
I'm glad to find that. I'm glad to hear that.
Even when I turn it on? Oh.
Brian Small, back were you here last week? 2 weeks in a row? No, you were gone last week. You were off to the football game. That's as usual. But nice to see you, Brian Small.
Good morning, Ken. A pleasure to be here. It's that crisp fall day, and looking forward to talking about good stuff today. It's a very complex outline and a very complex case study we're going to go through, but we're going to break it down and make sure that everybody understands it, because the world isn't an easy place, and situations don't always fit into a clean slot.
This is a long good morning.
What happened to good morning, Ken?
Yeah. So therefore,
you violated the three rules. Number one, you talked about the weather or taping.
Number
two, you said the word very, so Milt just hit the floor.
And three,
you went way too long.
Good morning, Jenny Lingo, back with us, our tax expert. You're here today to chime in on a lot of tax issues on this complicated case that we're going to work through.
Good morning, Ken. I thought it was ladies first, but today I seem to be last.
I'm sorry.
Save the best for last.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
When it comes to negotiating with the IRS, you're no lady.
Ooh.
That's a compliment.
That's a good thing. That is a compliment.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take that one, but okay.
Brian, did University of Michigan run out of maize and blue or something? I see you're sporting a U of M sweatshirt, but it's not. It's off color. Is that faded?
No, it's not faded. It started off this color in the first place. I
thought maybe it says 1817 on it, so I thought maybe it was an original edition that it was started off in maize and now it turned to beige.
No, that would be your sport jacket.
I have to read the text. I have to read the text that I just got.
Go ahead. Now we have to get down to
Couldn't
business.
Brian attend the away game?
Must have been from Tony. Okay, here's what we're going to cover today. It's going to be a three-part case study on Nate and Sarah. And Nate and Sarah are a couple. Nate owns ABC Tool and Die, and just to make sure everyone understands, that's a fictitious name, ABC Tool and Die, not in case there actually is one. We're not doing the names have been changed to protect the innocent here.
May I assume that they manufacture widgets?
Yes, every tool and die shop manufactures.
Every fictitious tool and die shop manufactures widgets.
The first segment, we're going to identify what the problem is. Facts and start exploring options. In segment 2, we're going to develop a plan, and then in segment 3, we're going to implement the plans. So first, let's start out with what the problem is. Okay, they're a nice couple. Nick has ABC Tool and Die. It's a fictitious tool shop. It serves the auto industry and OEMs. OEMs are original equipment manufacturers and Tier 2 suppliers. So it makes, like David said, widgets. Now, ABC survived the financial crisis, quote unquote, because it's now 2013 and that crisis gelled in 2009. So they didn't get closed down. They're still operating, but they've got problems. All of their assets are already pledged to the bank with a security interest, but back in 2010, the bank wanted a whole bunch of money from them. Why? Because they own a land and building, and the value of the land and building tanked in 2009 in the financial crisis, and therefore they were the bank said, Big Bad Bank said, we're under collateralized. Either you come up with cash to pay down the loan, or we're going to shut you down.
I think Nick has a bigger problem.
What's that?
If you look to the first page of your outline,
Yeah.
Okay, it's Nick and Sarah. And
No,
the
it's
next,
Nate and Sarah.
Nate and Sarah, and then it's
Nick.
Nick and Barbara. So either I don't know who is cheating on who, but what's going on here? I think there's more. It is a crisis, and it may turn into a financial crisis.
I don't want to get sidetracked, but I have to say that in our experience dealing with financial crisis times are very stressful. And sometimes as a result of that, marriages do encounter some level of difficulty. So in this case, we have a lot of different people involved. We have Nate and Sarah and Nick and Barbara.
Here we
and
go.
they're all the same people.
All right.
Okay. So we have a guy and a girl.
To protect the innocent.
To go forward, let's try and go with Nate and Sarah. But we'll see what happens because you never know. Now, so the bank said you've got to come up with cash or we're going to call the loan. So back in 2009 and 2010, Nate and Sarah, they pledged their house, the equity in their house, gave a second to the bank. They tapped out everything they could in the way of credit cards, both business cards and personal cards, to get cash advances to give the money to Big Bank in order that Big Bank would not call the loan. So they got over that hump, but they spent a ton of money. They leveraged everything they had to do it, and they left themselves with a ton of debt, and now they're encountering problems. They're operating under what's called a forbearance agreement with the bank, which means the bank is still on their case, and they've entered into an agreement with them, but they don't, so they're operating, but they're being watched very closely by the bank. Now, I want to talk about a couple of terms. You guys can chime in on these that are critical that people need to understand from a business perspective when you're dealing with financial issues. And in our experience, a lot of business people who have these situations don't even understand the terms. But it's important that you understand them, and they're not that complicated. The first one is when we say the bank has a security interest in the assets of ABC Tool, what do we mean by security interest? A security interest is a what?
Security interest is a method of collateral. So when we hear
I want one word.
it's security, it's
Lien.
it's a lien.
Lien. Bing, 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 bing. Brian wins 4 points.
But they all go together. So what you have to understand is there's a promissory note. That's the bank loaning the money to the borrower, and then the bank wants to secure themselves with the lien on your assets, and the way they do that is with what's called a security agreement.
And then that would be a lien on your business property. If you wanted to take a lien on your real estate, you give them a
mortgage.
So what happens by giving the lien, that says the lender gets to go after the collateral if you don't pay. We're coming up to a break, and when we come back from the break, the next thing about the lien is you have to ask the question of, well, what about priority, and how does that play into the picture? We'll be back after the break.
I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't run or exercise. I couldn't work.
Dr. Lewis Radin believes that pain shouldn't have to wait. His Spine Specialist of Michigan is a comprehensive center dedicated to helping you manage pain now. Expect the latest techniques and personalized care. Why suffer another minute?
He's the best. I tell people that he's the one that saved my life.
Make your appointment with Dr. Radin. Call 248-792-9496.
If your house is underwater, please listen to this important message.
The rules have finally changed. We're seeing some great loan modifications with reduced principal, and short sales are easier to get done than people think. The biggest problems I see are people wait too long or they try and do it themselves. There are no second chances.
If you're underwater in your house, call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Do you have tax problems, unfiled returns? Facing levies on wages in your property? You need an expert, not a cartoon character or salesman. Thav Gross is your solution.
You need to look at the big picture. That's what we do. We develop a plan that's right for you.
I had major tax problems. I didn't know what to do.
We did. We sat down together and solved your tax problem.
No more letters, no more phone calls. They saved me.
Call Thav Gross, 888-235-HELP.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
All right, welcome back. All right, when we came to the break, we have a case study. It is Nate and Sarah. But I've been advised that Nick and Barbara, the two interlopers into the situation, are now in witness protection. So we don't have to worry about them. So all we have to do is focus on Nate and Sarah. I want to thank Dave for that add-on on the witness protection.
If that's your story, we'll stick with it.
We are.
Good. Proceed.
Do you realize I've got Dave Klein as our executive producer back here, and then I have David Einstein. And then my favorite commercial that we cut is, Dave, you're a bright guy. Good job. But why are you carrying so much credit card debt? Why are you so dumb? You think it had anything to do with the Daves that are on the show? I'm wondering if it's subliminal.
No, I think it's you. I think it's absolutely just you.
Just me?
That's
okay.
it.
Okay.
Move on.
All right. We were talking about a security interest. So you have a lien. The other issue that comes into play that's important is priority. When you're a lender and you take a security interest or you take a mortgage, you also have to do something to, quote unquote, perfect your lien, which is a way of giving notice to the world that says, I'm number one, I got first claim on the assets. In a mortgage, you record your mortgage in the Register of Deeds office. In a security interest situation on assets, you file what we call as a UCC-1 in Lansing in order to perfect the lien. And perfection is important if there are more than one lien holders. If there's a second mortgage, if there's a tax lien, the question is who gets first dibs on the assets. And that becomes a very important question when you're dealing with companies that are in financial trouble.
And one quick comment, Ken. You gave the general rule, but you also need to know, depending on the assets that you are protecting, filing the UCC-1 is a financing statement. That's what the document's called. It gets tricky sometimes as to filing and things of that nature. But in general, you file it with the state, and that gives you your place in line from 1 on down.
And one is gold, 2 is usually not. Just keep that in mind. We'll keep going. Now, when we talked about forbearance agreement, this is an agreement that the bank enters into with you when you're technically in default, and they say, we'll allow you to continue to operate, but we're not happy about it. And it's a very one-sided agreement. The bank always requires you to acknowledge and confess that you're liable for the debt, you have no defenses against the bank, and you agree to additional terms in order for the bank to, quote-unquote, forbear from pursuing their remedies against you.
You know, Ken, one of the things about forbearance agreements is that when you're sitting there and the bank has you over a barrel, so to speak, that is not the time that you should just sit there and agree to whatever the bank says, though. It is very important to go out and get the appropriate counsel to review those documents, because it's as you said, it's one-sided, but you are giving up a whole lot of rights when you sign a forbearance agreement, and you may be agreeing to terms that you think that you just can't meet.
Yeah, I agree. Well, a lot of clients come in and I say, is there a forbearance agreement? And they say, yeah, and they hand it to you. And what they did is the bank handed them a document and said sign, and they signed. That's a mistake. You're not in a situation where you have a lot of leverage, but you have some leverage, and a good lawyer in a forbearance situation will chip away at the agreement. He'll get you more time to get your financial statements in. He'll argue that the penalty rate of interest should be reduced. Sometimes the banks jack you up 6 points when you're in default. Sometimes you can get them to waive that. It's not a situation where the lawyer can come in and start screaming and hollering. He can threaten bankruptcy a little bit, but big banks are used to hearing those threats. but if you create a good rapport with the counsel for the bank, you can chip away and make the deal better. And that's an important aspect.
Let's make sure we understand here when we're talking about bankruptcy in this type of situation with all this business debt, and we'll get to it later in the segment.
That's what we're going to do
but there's
later.
Two options for this company.
Later
one is Chapter 11 and one is Chapter 7.
Okay. I knew you had. I knew you couldn't possibly stay on script as soon as I saw the faded maize sweatshirt this morning.
It's not faded. It's cream colored with.
Ken, there's another point.
I want to get back to our facts.
When you're at that critical stage, and Brian's right. Make your decisions as informed decisions. Find out what your rights are. Quite often, also, it's a time to negotiate how the bank is going to modify your formula under their deal, as to what your percentages of your cash flow needs to be and whatnot. And that's something that gets overlooked in, I'd say, almost every security agreement, as well as maybe a forbearance agreement if you don't have representation. And that's the easiest one not to be in compliance with.
Both you guys, credit due, you've both made very good points, particularly on formulas, because signing an agreement where you can't meet the formula is signing an acknowledgement that you're in default and just gives the bank the keys to say they can close you up anytime. You have to negotiate things to make them work.
Right, and just for one quick second example, a formula may be, for example, that your cash flow has to be 1.2 times what your debt service is, so that they've got more cash than what your debt service is. And it could be 1.2, it could be 1.5, it could be 2.0. That's what we mean by formula.
Right. All right, now, let's get to the specifics of Nick and Barbara's situation. And try and, if you're listening to this while you're driving in the car, I don't suggest that you make notes on the side while you're driving, but just try and absorb the numbers. If you're catching this show when it's airing on TV, there's going to be a nice chart that's showing you what the numbers are. But the ABC LLC is a limited liability company that Nick and Sarah own, that they hold the land in the building that operates ABC Tool. And just so you know, it's not that important that they have a separate LLC, but that's usually how you hold real estate. The fair market value of that building is no. You're pointing me. The company is a tool and die shop.
Okay.
The LLC owns the land and building.
Right,
I've got it correct. This is not a problem. The fair market value of the building today is only $800,000. In 2007, as a side note, it was $1.6 million. So it took a major hit in the financial crisis. The mortgage with Big Bank is $1.1 million. That's the land and building. ABC Tool and Die Inc., the tool and die shop, has its own balance sheet. It's got cash at $20,000, accounts receivable from vendors from customers that owe money, $200,000. Its hard assets, fair market value, is $1 million, the machinery, the equipment. But if it's liquidated, that stuff's only worth $200,000. It also has liabilities. We're going to run through the liabilities one by one right after we're coming up to the break, and we'll cover the liabilities, and then we'll be back after the break.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances, and contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Financially strapped? Do you want to save your home?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Double Action, shooting center and gun shop for the largest selection of guns, accessories, and ammunition. Double Action is your only pro gun shop. And now you can train with the best in our basic CCW course with the most comprehensive curriculum, the best resources, and most accomplished staff. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Double Action is the only place to get your CCW or renewal. Double Action. We're on DeQuinder and Madison Heights.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
All right, welcome back. All right, we're dealing with Nate and Sarah's ABC tool problem, but I want to give a couple announcements first. We've got seminar coming up. 2014 is the year for financial success. That's what you need to focus on. We're coming into the fourth quarter. We have to start thinking about next year. There's seminars that are scheduled for October 23 and October 24, and there are also seminars scheduled for November 12th. I'm saying that because this show will air sometime in the latter part of October, early November, so both sets of seminars come into play. If you want to sign up for the seminars, you go to our website, thavgross.com or financialcrisistalkcenter.com, or you call 888-235-HELP, and you can always schedule them that way. Now, the seminars on the weeknights, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, are 6:30 to 8. We also have a seminar coming up November 16th, which is Saturday, that'll be right after the radio show, and it'll be from 11:30 to 1 o'clock p.m. All the seminars that are at our office building over on 12.5 Mile and Telegraph. Again, if you want to sign up, thavgross.com, financialcrisistalkcenter.com. The important thing people should realize in the seminars is it's not a situation of the crowd and the guests at the seminar are all desperately in financial straits. Sure, some people have issues, but it's an investigation of options. The thing that I always talk about to somebody is if you're making good money and you're carrying too much debt, you're leveraging your future and your retirement away. You need to find out what your options are to get rid of that debt in the fastest, most efficient way possible so that your money and cash starts going in the bank rather than to the bank.
Or if you've got some rental properties, should you flip them to LLCs? What are the ramifications there from an investment or protection aspect? All of those questions and answers we take, but there's also the most important aspect of the seminar is what, Brian? Because it's near and dear to your heart.
Staying out of debt.
No, close.
Getting rid of debt.
Jenny?
The question and answer section?
It's free.
No.
Brian
is near and dear to his heart.
Brian does like free.
That was a softball for you.
You know, I have to say something. We have to get back, but Chipotle has sent a memo saying they're not going to give you that much. What's that red stuff
Pico
you always
de
put on
Gallo or
there?
something.
This stuff's great.
They're objecting to the triple scoops on the Pico de Gallo. They're very upset. They're thinking about declaring Chapter 11. You're bankrupting the company.
I don't think so. It's owned by McDonald's Corporation.
I want to thank our sponsors, Ben Johnson Law, Gold Star Law, Samasco Law, Double Action Shooting Range and Gun Shop, Spine Specialists of Michigan. Also, we got 2 new sponsors coming on board, Cardiology Associates of Michigan and Elite REO Services, Alan Stalter, a real estate broker. Who handles a lot of our short sales. We work with him all the time. Does a great job.
So to wrap it up for us, though, we've got the liability side.
Back to the liabilities. All right. So they're secured for ABC Tool and Die. They've got $500,000 that they owe to the big bank on the business. They've got payroll tax liabilities. This is where Jenny comes in. $250,000 to the feds, $125,000 to the state of Michigan. They have unsecured credit card debt of $150,000, and they have other unsecured vendors of $100,000.
Ken, I have Jenny explain it real quickly because this is how we're handling this segment. How do the payroll taxes liabilities come about? What does that actually mean?
Basically, what happens is a lot of times companies, they pay whatever bills they need to keep the light on. And the IRS and the Michigan Department of Treasury are often not that quick to jump to close businesses down. So basically what's happening is when you're filing your federal 941s or your monthly sales use and withholding taxes, a lot of businesses start filing them and not paying them. So when you're taking the money out of your employee's check where they're paying their Social Security, Medicare, and withholding taxes, and then you're supposed to be putting in your matching portion, a lot of businesses, when they get strapped for cash, not only don't put in their matching portion, but they start using what is actually the employee's money for the daily operations.
Do you ever see the movie Pretty Woman?
Yes.
And when she goes to go shopping, and the first store she goes into, they turn her down because
they're judging a book by their cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then she comes the next day, and she's got all the packages, and she pops into the store, and she says, "Big mistake, really big."
Yes.
Well, not paying your payroll taxes is a really big mistake, really big. Unfortunately, we see it happen on a frequent basis. It's a major, serious problem. It is not the way you finance your business, but it's a consequence of what happens when the business owner doesn't want to shut down his company and he doesn't have the cash. The payroll taxes go unpaid, and it becomes a big problem. All right, now Nick and Sarah, here's their finances. Nick has personal credit card debt now of $100,000. Sarah has $20,000 in credit card debt. Their house is worth $300,000 in today's market. They have a mortgage to Friendly Bank on the first mortgage for $350,000, and they have a second mortgage that's secured back to Big Bank on the business debt, and the business debt that it's owed in total to Big Bank is $1.6 million. So that house is clearly underwater because of the second mortgage, and it's underwater on the first. All right, what about guarantees to Big Bank? Well, here's the answer to that question, because it's going to be important when we get to the analysis points. Nick is a guarantor and has signed all the notes, and he's on the hook to the bank. Sarah is not. Keep that in mind. Now, here's the current situation. Sarah has a job. She's a pharmaceutical rep. She makes $95,000 a year, so she's got good income. Nick lives and dies with ABC. IRS is bearing down on Nick and ABC big time on the taxes. The state is right behind on their payroll taxes. Big Bank so far is not rattling the cage because they don't really know what's going on, but they got that forbearance agreement. We need to sort out the issues and develop a strategy. What we've done so far is we've gathered the facts, and we've created now we need initial impressions. What do we think that we can do to resolve the problem? The biggest question Nick and Sarah want to know is, can we save the business?
Or should we save the business?
Or should we save the business? And then if we can't save the business, then what? And then what about all this other debt that's lingering out there? So you've got a lot of issues that are interplayed here, which we're going to really flesh out when we get into the next segment. But we've had a little bit of time before we come up to the break. Brian, it looks like you're dying to say something.
Well, I'm just looking at the situation and saying what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn this into 3 sets of issues. We're going to turn it into Nick's issues, Sarah's issues, and the business's issues, because you've got to compartmentalize each one, because Nick has certain options, Sarah has certain options, and then the business has certain options. And I think our results are going to be that we're going to be able to keep the business open. We're going to get.
I don't know about that.
We're going to get Nick out of debt,
Maybe.
and Sarah is going to come out smelling like a rose.
All right. Well, we'll find out more when we get to the next segment. Thanks for listening to this segment of the Financial Crisis Talk Center. We're going to address in segment 2 Nick and Sarah and ABC Tools options, what they can and they cannot do.